Well, I think I'm live, and by it's just me today. And I'm getting the confirmation here. So we're gonna see what's happening. It's a little different show here today. About a week ago, Mike and I announced that we were going to take a little bit of break last week and run a couple of reruns. So that's exactly what we did, and we're still kind of figuring out exactly what the plans are for how we're going to continue to manage this as I start my own watch parties. Which, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and start the show while I start my watch parties, and then I'll get into it a little bit more. So here we go. Oh gosh, I did it, didn't I? Didn't bother to share the music. So let's give that one a go again and see what ends up happening. We might need some help from the lunatics to let me know that the music's coming through, because normally I rely on Hot Mic 3's little head bob. Welcome to hotlou Happy Hour. I'm your host, Lou Abramowski, or somewhat musically known as hotlou, or solely, I guess. But this is hotlou Happy Hour, running solo today, just to check in on one quick thing and give everybody an update, because Mike and I are still trying to figure out our schedule and how we're going to manage this moving forward. I think it's going to be a blend of things as we kind of maybe run a little bit more of a quiet schedule here over the month of August, and as summer kind of comes to a close and we figure out something a little bit different. But we've been hearing from a handful of people that they miss hotlou Happy Hour, so that's a really good sign. It's just a matter of Mike and I figuring out exactly how we can manage it now that we're not stuck inside, 24/7 over the course of a few months, and things definitely seem to be reopening quite a bit. So what I wanted to talk about today, while we kind of figure that stuff out, is specifically that I'm sure a handful of people have already noticed, but Trump has been threatening to ban TikTok, and we may have seen this from a couple other countries. As far as I can tell, there are two other countries right now that have banned TikTok, and it's Indonesia and India. And I think some people might still be wondering why exactly TikTok might be banned, and it boils down to something pretty basic, and that is that TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance, and ByteDance is a Beijing, China-based company. And of course, in China, all private companies are subject to far more government control than you'd see pretty much anywhere else. I shouldn't say pretty much anywhere else, but certainly by the standards that we Americans are used to. And given that Trump is really looking at China as more and more of a threat, and I think anybody paying attention to China can appreciate exactly, what China, represents in terms of a threat to both democracy in general and what it means for the world. China is looking at 1 billion citizens. They've got a gigantic amount of land mass. They've got resources, that dwarf the United States resources. And the government has a lot of control over a very large amount of the people there. And what's interesting, as I stream hotlou Happy Hour over Zoom is also another company that's got, Chinese ties. But, I think the question that comes to mind for people, and I'll get into it in a second here, is that it's like, so what, just because they're a Chinese owned company, like what is the actual threat? Like, all TikTok is just like this opportunity for a bunch of, people trying to have a little bit of fun on the internet by, recording and editing these fun videos together. Well, what's interesting is the couple The couple of big threats that at least I see and I've seen people talk about are ones that at this point are somewhat um, somewhat I want to say imaginary, but what I mean to say is kind of unrealized and maybe not unrealized, but certainly, we're not seeing any sort of the negative effect of it. But TikTok collects a lot of personal information, even when you're just using the app. So, location is one of them. It obviously has access to your camera. And just between those two things, there's, something that everybody should consider that, you know, knowing where you're located and being able to see everything through your camera, there might even be exploits where you think your camera might not be recording or even viewing whatever you're looking at, but that information could be collected. So that information might be actually being sent to a Chinese company. And maybe it doesn't matter if you're just hanging out in your living room. But where it might come into play is, let's say you're just like oddly, you've got TikTok open and you're not recording, but it's access to your camera. And maybe you set your phone down or you're holding it in just a certain way that your credit card, you know, gets in the shot for a second. You could see how potentially that could expose your credit card. Or let's say you're working for a company like Wells Fargo that, as I understand it, has already banned it at the corporate level. And that could be a scenario where maybe you're not recording, you're the user, but in a screenshot accessed through somebody collecting that information, they might see what's on your screen and collect private information from, like, let's say a Wells Fargo customer. And then on the location side, you could see how somebody who might be like a election official, might also be in a very similar scenario where they could be compromised one way or another. Now, like I said, these certainly seem like science fiction type of threats. And as I noticed, loyal lunatic Brandon Mattis has been tuning in and out here, and him working for a security company, I'm sure they talk about it. And we talked about it 2 weeks ago with the CEO of his company. And and right on cue here, loyal lunatic Brandon Mattis says, we've got a good analogy at work. Bank vault is secure. Your local playground is safe. Zoom is more like a playground. Something bad could certainly happen, but if you're mindful, you'll more than likely be all right. And I think that speaks to kind of what I was saying. Like, if you're taking extra precautions to make sure that sensitive information is not within the screen, you're probably safe. But, that's assuming that you think your camera's off when it could be on, or you forget about something being in the background that might be compromising your own safety. And, that's the scenario that we're in. And these are just the most obvious ones, but there are potentially other things that we've not thought of that, this is an arms race with technology like this. And so there's probably, I think an argument for securing this. And we've actually seen this already. So initially, TikTok got popular outside of the United States, while a company that was basically the same thing and a product that was basically the same thing called Musical.ly was gaining popularity in the United States. And that's when ByteDance acquired Musical.ly. And that acquisition, I think, happened in late 2017. And then by, let's see here, I'm looking up the data. So it was late 2017 that Musical.ly was acquired by TikTok, or by ByteDance, and then basically it was absorbed by TikTok in mid 2018. So yeah, it looks like August 2nd, 2018 that happened. And now we've seen a couple of governments, especially ones that feel threatened by China, specifically Indonesia and India, are banning the app. And now Technically, I don't exactly know how that happens because I think most of what's happening with TikTok is on US soil. That's not to say that it doesn't go back to Beijing, but the servers and things like that, the vast majority of that stuff is for performance, just sitting on American soil. So it's a little bit more complicated than just like shutting off the, network connectivity between the United States and TikTok in China. But it certainly seems like a reality. And I've seen at least a handful of moms out there that have fallen in love with TikTok over the last 5 months in the pandemic, get a little bit nervous and hit the panic button about losing TikTok, which has been fascinating because I think it's such a fun app. I've said for years that I think Snapchat was really the first, what felt like a perfect mobile app that was fun and incorporated everything about a mobile device to make it fun. And of course, Snapchat just continues to innovate like over and over and do awesome things. And you see Facebook and Instagram really like overnight copying the innovations that they're doing. But TikTok really capitalized on like meme culture really well and layered on this music element that made it a lot of fun. But with that fun, given that it's a Chinese company and that full adoption so rapidly, made it pretty interesting. I haven't really seen a ton of pushback, so I'd love it if you lunatics would jump in the chat here and let me know if you've seen a little bit of the pushback. And I'm going to throw a poll here too, because I'm curious how many people are using TikTok. Are you using TikTok? So I'll put this in the main yes, no, and not after the Chinese reveal, or not after learning China owned it. So I'll be curious to see how many of the lunatics out there are using TikTok. But, we've got, like loyal lunatic Brandon Mattis here mentioned, the risks are probably pretty low, particularly if you're just using it for fun and it's mostly like in your house. But if it's around sensitive information or you yourself are you have some sort of role in society where you have access to that, sensitive information, you do need to take a little extra precaution, particularly making sure like the camera isn't collecting information or location while you're using it and not thinking anything of it. So, if you're using that, and that's a really, it's a really good point from loyal lunatic Brandon Mattis again here, that, one concern that maybe isn't really related to the China thing, but that we've seen a growing interest in this, like definitely a groundswell that I have not really seen before, but this notion about protecting children in these apps. And I'm not a parent, Brandon's not a parent, but obviously a ton of parents will tune in here, that, it's not just the content that the children are producing, but the simple accessibility between, a child easily being able to talk to somebody who is completely anonymous on the internet is something that I, highly encourage, parents of young children who are, accessing the internet one way or another, even if it's not through TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, if they're gaming and they have communication with, internet strangers, that's something to really keep your eye on. And what I've seen is that there's a little bit of a growing trend, especially within games, of that happening. And maybe Brandon will add to that as well. But, all in all, I think the message I want to kind of communicate here is that, I think the risk is probably pretty low unless you're trying to use TikTok while you're at the office and you work for a bank or, some sort of government office, or, some other place where, data security is pretty important, or your own personal security is important. Definitely discourage you from using TikTok, or, take extra precautions when you're using it. Same goes for Zoom, by the way. And we're gonna see how much panic sets in. I'd be very curious to see what ends up happening if Trump does ban TikTok and what it really means for, maybe another hit against his, it wouldn't even be against his base, but it would give more ammunition, I think, to a ton of people who are anti-Trump. Although I've seen a ton of, honestly, like I've got a friend who publishes a lot of Trump sound bites, and she loves doing the lip sync stuff to some of the just like dumbest things that he says. And it's fascinating to see that she is publishing it, literally making fun of him. And a good, I think about 20% of the comments that she gets are from Trump supporters, thinking that she's publishing it as support for Trump. So maybe there's a lot more Trump support on TikTok than I really realize. And maybe that banning it could eat into his support, but I think it would be the exact opposite. I think it would fuel and fan the flames of that Trump hate a lot more. But it seems like every day that goes by, Trump has one less potential move to actually excite his base and try to recover. But we also don't know. We don't know if there's going to be a brain-eating amoeba that gets released into the wild next week. And I feel like I'm jinxing us by even saying that out loud. But sure seems like every day that goes by, he's eroding his base more and more, while Biden continues to just sit very quietly and increase his poll numbers without even doing anything. So, but we've been promised that he will announce his VP very, very, very soon. And loyal lunatic Kevin Thompson shared an amazing link, and I think this was an Onion link that said something along the lines of Biden so close to choosing his woman VP that he can smell it. Which I should have looked up that headline. Maybe Alyssa, if you're listening, maybe you'll throw that in the show notes if you can track it down, because it was a pretty hilarious article. But that's all I wanted to share for today, is the TikTok stuff and an update on the schedule. Mike and I are still going to work out exactly how we're going to be doing it. I will say also that we might have another Ultimate Player guest this week. So the Ultimate Players in the audience, I think Josh Klain, legendary Josh Klain, may or may not be joining us this week if we can work it out on the schedule to talk a little Frisbee. Because I think a handful of people really love the Ben Yacht conversation, and I've noticed it's been getting a little bit more traction here last week. So that's going to about do it, unless lunatics, you want to chime in the comments of what you're really hoping for a schedule for the show. But I think it's going to look a little bit different here for the next month. And then beyond that, we're going to figure out exactly what's going to happen. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. So thanks everybody for tuning in to today's Hot Lou Happy Hour. I'm your host, Hot Lou, and I'm excited to talk to you tomorrow. There will be a show tomorrow. It will be Lou's Day. I'll be there, and I'll try to talk Hot Mike number 3 into joining us. But again, thanks for tuning into today's Hot Lou Happy Hour. I am your host, Hot Lou, and we'll talk